The sound of the kitchen clock ticking was louder than the rain outside. I remember staring at the back of his neck, at the tiny freckle I had kissed 1,000 times, and feeling like I was looking at a stranger. He was gripping the counter so hard his knuckles had turned white. When he finally turned around, his eyes were empty, devoid of the love I had built my entire life around. He didn't have to say the words out loud for me to know it was over. The silence in that room was the loudest thing I had ever heard. We were standing in the ruins of our marriage, and neither of us knew how to stop the bleeding. Before the kitchen became a crime scene of memories, we were the couple everyone else wanted to be. We had bought the house 3 years ago, a white picket fence dream that smelled like fresh paint and promise. Our Sunday mornings were sacred, dedicated to pancakes, strong coffee, and the New York Times crossword that we never quite finished. He would look at me from across the table with a softness that made me feel safe, like nothing in the world could touch us. We had just started talking about trying for a baby, a conversation that felt like the natural next chapter in a book we were writing together. I trusted him with my life, my heart, and my future. I thought we were invincible. The first crack in the glass appeared on a Tuesday night, unremarkable and quiet. He came home from work 2 hours late, smelling like whiskey and stale air, which wasn't like him at all. I asked him where he had been, trying to keep my voice light, joking about traffic or a happy hour with the guys. He didn't laugh. He just looked at me, looked right through me, and mumbled something about a flat tire and a tow truck. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him, but a cold knot formed in my stomach that wouldn't go away. He went straight to the shower, washing off the day, or maybe washing off something else. I sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the water run, and realized I didn't know his password anymore. Suspicion is a slow poison, and it started to eat away at everything I thought was true. He began keeping his phone face down on the nightstand, a small gesture that screamed volumes. When I walked into a room, he would instinctively lock the screen, his thumbs moving with a practiced blur. I found myself watching him, tracking his movements like a detective in a movie I didn't want to be in. One afternoon, I was looking for a pen in his coat pocket and pulled out a receipt for a jewelry store I had never been to. It was dated 2 days prior. The item was a gold necklace, not something for me because I only wear silver. I put the receipt back, my hands shaking, and waited for him to bring it home. He never did. The spiral tightened when I saw a notification pop up on his iPad while we were watching TV. It was a message from a contact saved only as an initial, K. The preview read, "Can't wait to see you tonight." My breath hitched in my throat, a sharp intake of air that I prayed he didn't hear. I glanced over at him. He was staring at the screen, his face pale, swiping the notification away with trembling fingers. "Just spam," he said, his voice cracking slightly. He didn't look at me. He just kept staring at the black screen, his jaw set tight. I nodded, forcing a smile that felt like plastic, and turned back to the show. I couldn't hear the TV over the roaring in my ears. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there next to him, listening to his breathing, wondering if he was dreaming of her. I started checking his location logs, a violation of his privacy that I justified with my own desperation. He said he was working late at the office, but the map placed him at a hotel downtown 3 times that week. The fear was paralyzing, a physical weight that sat on my chest every time he left the house. I began to withdraw, hiding my tears in the shower so he wouldn't see me break. I cooked dinner, I cleaned the house, I played the part of the happy wife. But inside I was screaming. We stopped talking. The silence between us grew until it filled every corner of the house, heavy and suffocating. I remember asking him if he was happy, a desperate attempt to catch him off guard. He paused for a second too long. "Of course I am," he said, but his eyes were on the floor. The point of no return happened on a rainy Friday, exactly 2 weeks after I saw the notification. He said he was going to the gym, but he packed a bag, a small duffel that looked too heavy for just workout clothes. I followed him. I know it was crazy. I know I crossed a line, but I couldn't stop myself. I watched him turn into the parking lot of that same downtown hotel. He didn't go to the gym. He walked into the lobby, and a woman met him at the door. She wasn't a stranger. It was his sister's best friend, someone I had known for years. She hugged him, not like a friend, but like a lover. I sat in my car, watching through the rain-streaked windshield, and felt my heart shatter into a million pieces. I drove home, the world blurring through my tears, and waited in the dark kitchen. I didn't turn on any lights. I just sat there, counting the minutes, feeling the cold settle into my bones. When he walked in 4 hours later, he stopped dead when he saw me sitting at the table. He smelled like her perfume, a floral scent that made my stomach churn. He tried to smile, tried to act like nothing had happened, but he couldn't hold the mask up anymore. I didn't yell, I didn't scream. I just slid the printed maps across the table toward him. "You're not at the gym, David," I whispered. The look on his face was a mix of terror and resignation. He slumped into the chair across from me, the fight draining out of him instantly. "Tell me everything," I said, my voice sounding like it belonged to someone else. He started with the lies, the excuses about how they were just friends, how it wasn't what I thought. But I didn't look away, and I didn't blink, and eventually the truth came spilling out. It had been going on for 8 months. They met when I was out of town for my grandmother's funeral. He said he was lonely, that he felt neglected, that he needed someone who listened to him. With every word, he was hammering nails into the coffin of our marriage. He told me he loved me, that he wanted to make it work, but the words sounded hollow, like coins dropping into an empty well. I listened to him destroy our history, rewriting our happiness into a lie. The fallout wasn't an explosion, it was an implosion. I told him to leave. I didn't want a discussion. I didn't want to fight. I just wanted him out of my sight. He packed his things in that same duffel bag, moving through the house like a ghost, taking pieces of himself with him. When the front door clicked shut, the silence was absolute. I sat on the floor of our bedroom, surrounded by the clothes he hadn't taken, and cried until I was dry. The days that followed were a blur of pain and logistics. I had to call my parents, I had to tell our friends, I had to admit to the world that my perfect life was a fraud. The pity in their eyes was almost worse than the betrayal. I spent weeks asking myself what I had done wrong, analyzing every conversation, every meal, every missed connection. I replayed the last year in my head, looking for signs I had ignored. The shame was suffocating, a voice in the back of my mind telling me I wasn't enough, that I had driven him into her arms. I went to therapy. I stared at the ceiling. I walked through the house like a zombie, touching the walls where we had hung photos, now replaced by empty nails. I hated him for what he did, but I hated myself more for not seeing it sooner. The trust was gone, evaporated like steam, leaving behind a cold residue that I couldn't scrub off. It's been 6 months since the night in the kitchen. We are divorced now, the papers signed and filed away in a drawer I try not to open. I kept the house. I painted the walls a different color, a soft gray that doesn't remind me of him. Some days are good, and I feel like I'm finally breathing again. Other days, the grief hits me like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me when I hear a song on the radio or smell his cologne in a crowd. I'm learning to be alone, to be whole on my own, but it's a slow, painful process. I don't know if I'll ever trust anyone the way I trusted him. The scar tissue is thick, and it aches when it rains. I saw him yesterday across the street. He was holding hands with her, looking at her the way he used to look at me. For a second, I wanted to run over there, to scream and demand an explanation for why he got to be happy when I was still broken. But I didn't move. I just watched them walk away, realizing that the version of him I loved never really existed. I was in love with the character he was playing, and the show is finally over. I turned around and walked the other direction, stepping into the life I am trying to rebuild. I still wonder sometimes if he ever thinks about me, or if I'm just a shadow he stepped over to get to the light.